God bless ICE. God bless America.
The chasm that we are seeing between left and right, between Christian and atheist, is a divide like we have never seen before.
No dictators! Free America!
My humble assignment here today is to bring us straight to the Lord in a prayer of rededication. Would you join me in that? Would you join me in that?
We are told from Bible prophecy that just before the second coming, the majority of Christians will fall away.
How is it possible for this to happen when you have the government dedicate America back to God on the National Mall of all places?
For now I have chosen and sanctified this house, that my name may be there forever.
However, Bible prophecy warned us that this day would come.
We Catholics, I'm grateful to say, have played a key role in the story of the United States. To commemorate this momentous anniversary, boy, am I grateful that we bishops in the United States intend to consecrate the United States of America to the most Sacred Heart of Jesus on June 12th of this year.
This Christian revival, it's not what it seems. One book foretold all this. That's why we're handing out these cards that tell people all about it.
Universal day of rest, like a uniform day of rest.
That would be great.
I honestly think it should be Saturday. That's the original Sabbath, but I'll take Sunday if that's what we can get.
This country is a Christian country, and at the end of the day, we should be following those values in our lawmaking and all that.
His kingdom will come, His will be done on earth.
Look at the fourth commandment with the lifestyles of being so hyperactive and so go, that a day of rest would be welcome. But I think God has a plan for us to refocus, to have a Sabbath.
Well, I think we're at one of the most famous buildings in the United States Capitol.
St. Peter's
because
Basilica,
it is the
right?
Capitol, yeah. Yeah, it actually is very reminiscent of Rome.
It is.
If you see the structure there at the top, you see all the light, all the different windows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's so many different windows at the top, and it's to let natural light in. You know, one of the things that I think of is it's a round rotunda, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then all this light comes in, and it's actually reminiscent of a solar temple, actually, where you have lights filtering in the top and coming down below. But you know, what's fascinating to me is this building, it has really two sides to it. This is kind of really the front that faces the road. Everything else is kind of a park behind it, and it's the National Mall basically going that direction. But this is facing east, and we'll get a shot of it. There's a compass that's up here on the ground that leaves no doubt in anyone's mind which direction this building is facing, that we're facing east. And it just so happens that we're here in the morning. I don't know if you can see, the sun is rising. This whole building, this whole solar temple is facing east toward the rising sun, which is just coming up. In fact, you can tell it faces east because there's a figurine on top of the Capitol building. And which direction is the figurine facing? East, toward the rising sun. That's the direction of the building. Why is that? It's because it's important symbolically.
You know, wasn't there a warning in Ezekiel 8 about the highest abomination being these 25 men with their backs to the temple, bowing towards the sun?
Right. And so you have the temple here facing east,
yeah,
versus what was the temple in Israel? Which direction did it face? It would have been west,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Because their backs would have been toward the east and they were facing west, actually.
Yep. As above, so below,
Yeah.
as we'll see later on as
Yeah.
we go through.
Well, it's interesting, you know, in the counterpart in Rome, one of the things that it has is this big, compass there, this big solar wheel, and the obelisk casts its shadow on the basilica in the spring equinox. It's kind of like a symbol of fertility as well.
Right.
So all the way back to Babylon.
What stood out to me from the symbolism was just the obvious reflection of like the Vatican and Rome. I mean, ultimately you can see the obelisk matching St. Peter's Basilica. You can see the basilica matching with the Capitol building. You can see the artwork matching, interior design matching. and just a lot of the layout there reflecting exactly how Rome looks.
Look at what else is at the top. So you got these arrows that are bound around this central, like, axe head, basically. There's an axe head, of course, in the Senate, but you've got this bundle of arrows, and it's in a fascia, reckoning back to kind of the government of Rome itself, very much a fascist government. America's founded upon liberty, upon a republic, a constitutional republic, and freedom, but Bible prophecy reveals that someday that liberty will be lost, and that America will fall, and it will make an image to Rome.
Yep. It's quite interesting as well, this figurine on the very top. It's an ode to the goddess Minerva, which is in the Roman pantheon equal to the goddess Athena in the Greek pantheon, who has the war cap on. So why is there a pagan deity above our nation's Capitol building? You have this pagan deity on top of the Capitol building symbolizing rulership.
That's when it really stands out to you and you're like, wow, this is really an echo of Rome. There's no other city, there's no other country in the world that has as much of an echo towards Rome as Washington, D.C. There's a lot of symbolism inside on the actual rotunda ceiling. You have the apotheosis of George Washington, which shows George Washington seated in the clouds looking down from above. You also have the Phrygian cap in that painting. And his hand symbols, he's also kind of got his hands like this.
He does.
And so I think there's some symbolism there.
Where Washington is too, to your point on the apotheosis, he's flanked again by Minerva, the Roman goddess. Also equal to Athena, and he has more goddesses around him.
And in the middle of the painting is George Washington surrounded by women, 13 of which represent the 13 original colonies. Also in the painting are scenes representing 6 different themes: war, science, marine, commerce, mechanics, and agriculture, symbolized by Roman gods and goddesses.
He's sitting in the place of Zeus. Right. So that as above, so below symbolizes that he's Zeus. Zeus is the god of lightning. Can you think of anybody in the Bible who's associated with lightning?
Lucifer. Well, about a month ago, I was going through a tour here, and one of the things that they pointed out in some of the galleries is there's all of these statues to all of these different, gods and whatnot. And so it's very, there's a lot of paganism within it.
So I think as we continue on, we're going to continue to see more Roman echoes here in the buildings and structures here around our nation's capital. Let's go check some more out.
Here at Heritage and Hope, we've built a modest collection of rare books, many of them hundreds of years old. The collection includes works by Roman Catholic scholars, including Jesuits, Protestant reformers, and even pages from a Bible brought by pilgrims who crossed the Atlantic in search of religious freedom.
And so, can you guess what these pages are right here?
Looks like a Geneva Bible.
Yes, so these are the Geneva Bible pages. These are specifically from the book of Revelation, and this is Revelation chapter 13. This is the Bible that would have come over with the pilgrims on the Mayflower. This was printed in 1583, and it's a large pulpit Bible, and they would have had a Bible like this literally on the Mayflower. Theoretically, it could have been this one, we don't know for sure, but literally on the Mayflower, and was taken to the New World. And what's fascinating is this is a study Bible. So they actually have commentary along the edges that goes along with the main body of text. And it's in this protective sleeve so that we don't damage it, because these pages are very fragile. But what's fascinating is to read this commentary, because what does Revelation talk about with the first beast? What are some of the characteristics of the first beast in Revelation 13?
Well, one of the things that the first beast has, it has a little horn power, it has 10 divisions initially, and then a little horn rises up, and that little horn receives a deadly wound. Of course, in 1798, the Pope lost civil authority as well. But what did they call the Pope in these documents here?
And see, that's what's interesting, is because Revelation 13 has 2 beasts. It has the first beast, which, like you said, has 10 divisions, just like Europe divided into 10 divisions, the Roman Empire divided into the 10 divisions of Europe. But that second power in Revelation 13 is what is key. And these footnotes are talking about the Antichrist.
Yeah.
And it says here, these are their footnotes, remind you, such as may be understood by man's reason, for about 666 years after this revelation to the Pope, or Antichrist begin to be manifest in the world. So in the Pilgrims' thought, when they came to the New World, which, you know, is this renaissance of freedom, right? And new thought and just a rapidly growing society. And you have the Declaration of Independence signed, you know, 1776. You have this fledgling country that is establishing itself very firmly on the world stage. So, okay, our hypothesis here is that the first beast is the Roman Catholic Church. But we're basically stating that the second beast is the United States of America. Give me some biblical proof for that, because there's somebody out there who's watching who's going to say, how are you getting that the United States is mentioned in Bible prophecy? What are some easy ways that we can identify that and come to an ironclad understanding here?
Well, there's a couple of ways that I would go about it. First, we got to remember that the first four beasts came out of the ocean or the waters. Now, what do waters represent? Well, in Revelation 17, there's a connection with waters to peoples, nations, languages, and tongues. We can see these beasts coming out of a very populated area with lots of water. But this beast comes out of an unpopulated area. It comes out of a wilderness or land-based region. We can also see that it has two horns, but unlike the horns of the first beast, which have crowns on all of them, this power does not have crowns. We find that the United States up to this point has not been ruled by pope or by king. It does not have crowns, but it has a division of power. And we see that with the two horns. It's a constitutional republic that has for centuries or for past couple of centuries separated church and state. And those powers have been divided. It's lamb-like in how it respects religious liberty as well. However, it speaks like a dragon. And how does a nation speak?
Through its laws.
Through its laws, right. So this power will speak like a dragon. And how does the dragon speak? The dragon speaks contrary to the law of God.
I would say the dragon speaks in coercion.
And that as well, yeah.
So that representation of how the country speaks is through the Capitol building. And isn't it interesting that that Capitol building faces east towards the rising sun?
We also got to remember that this power, another reason why this points to the United States of America is the time period of when this power comes on. And that is at the close of the 1260-year period, the wound for the little horn. So you can see that arising. What other nation arose at that time period? That was not European, that arose around the 18th century, that was founded upon Christian principles, and what I mean by that is religious liberty, and that also has a separation of church and state. That's one of the things that's made America so great, that we've escaped so much bloodshed that has happened for the past 2,000 years, is by respecting religious freedom. That's one of the core principles and the bastions of what makes our nation great, is respecting liberty of conscience.
This first beast that rises out of the sea, and it's an amalgamation, and it's a combination of the beast and Daniel 7. And you see clearly that the way this beast is, it blasphemes, it persecutes the saints. It was given to rule for a time for 42 months, which is the same time prophecy, the 1260 days in Daniel 7. And then you know that there's a second beast that comes after, at the same time, that the first beast is getting a deadly wound that will be healed, that America, the second beast that rises out of the earth, that lamb-like beast, that supposed Christian nation that looks like a lamb but speaks like a dragon, will form an image to the first beast, which is Rome.
You know, if this holds true, though, if the second beast is kind of mimicking and making an image to the first beast, we should see some of that more openly in our nation's capital.
You know, I think from an architectural perspective, from a government perspective, we can see how the United States is following Rome. We have senators. Ancient Rome had senators. You know, the Roman government itself was very much, there have been individuals who commented how it became kind of a very fascist government. And it's interesting that on the spire of the United States Capitol building, you can see the fascia the axe head, who wields the axe head, and then bound around it the arrows with a fascia around it. It's interesting too that even the artist in the Capitol building was one of the same artists that was one for Vatican as well, for the Vatican.
Yeah.
We can see as well the obelisk and the basilica, how similar that is to St. Peter's Basilica as well.
Well, let's take a look at some of those other landmark structures and see what other proof they have.
Absolutely.
Man, that thing is tall. Yeah, one of the things I think that's interesting about this is the largest Egyptian obelisk in the world. Now, obviously, it's not one contiguous piece of stone like the obelisk that is outside of the Vatican.
It's not just any obelisk, it's the biggest obelisk in the entire world. And that is nothing short of intentional.
It has a reflecting pool down there that we're going to see in a little bit that reflects perfectly in the reflecting pool. Why is that, you think?
It's very pagan occult symbology for as above, so below.
Right. And the pathway that we're on right now is the sidewalk that leads up, and there's actually 4 sidewalks that come and they converge around the Washington Monument. And it actually forms a unique symbol called the Vesica-Piscis, if I'm saying that correctly.
Vesica-Piscis, yep.
Vesica-Piscis. And basically it's the fish bladder.
It is.
There's not just one obelisk in Rome, there's multiple obelisks. There's one outside of St. John of Lateran's that was actually brought over from Egypt, dedicated to the sun god Ra, that was there when the Israelites left in the Exodus. And so that symbolism, you have basically an obelisk, which what is an obelisk?
It's a phalanx. I mean, it's genital. It's a male genital. So you have the male and the Vesica-Piscis is the female.
Right, yeah. And so when you have the converging circles like that, it's all based on like fertility, basically.
And what's the point of this? Again, we're supposedly founded on Christian principles. Why is there an Egyptian obelisk, that represents phalanx worship? And it's how tall?
555 feet, very specifically.
Very, very symbolic in the occult world.
Right. What's fascinating is the White House is that direction, and it faces it. The Lincoln Memorial's right there, faces it.
Yep.
The back side of the Capitol building, which, there's really 2 sides to it, faces it. But then everything, the whole point of the National Mall is kind of eastward.
So you have a pagan fertility, symbolism, direct center, everything around it is facing it.
You could take a 5-year-old and show them a picture of the obelisk that's in St. Peter's Basilica, and then show them the Washington Monument. And don't give them any other descriptions and just say, are these two the same thing? And they would say yes. There's so much symbolism between the United States in the Capitol and the Vatican. And that's really what we're going to see as we go further down.
There's no way it could be by chance.
No, there's no way. Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Y'all check out those reflection pools over there.
The reflecting pool right here, they're painting it blue. They're painting the entire thing blue. It obviously had water in it, and you could see the reflection perfectly of the Washington Monument reflected in the pool that you see right here.
Blue's an interesting color choice if you think about it from a biblical perspective. In Numbers 15, blue was the color choice for a ribbon that went around the priest's robe to remind them about God's law. So blue is to remind us of God's law. And something we're seeing as Christian nationalists are trying to bring America back to a remembrance of God's law, but they're trying to do it through force and coercion to mandate and to legislate it by law. Specifically starting out with blue laws of all things.
Yeah.
Well, you're Christian nationalists. You want the kingdom to be the government. Yes. You want God to come and overtake the government. Yes. Guilty as charged.
You actually don't need like a majority supportive population. You just need a strong-willed minority. And then that ruling class can shape the imagination of the majority. There's a lot of people who will just kind of shift with the imagination set by the people, the ruling class.
All the 10 commandments must be legislated and make it clear to everyone which Sabbath we're in favor of.
The civil law can also include, I think, blasphemy laws, Sunday Sabbath laws. People ask me, what laws would you want? I think having blue laws, the Sunday Sabbath laws, really is the first thing that happened. Like, it's not blasphemy laws, it's not, laws against heretics.
And how he weaves in all these different interesting facts and history of the Sabbath, and then even certain laws, like blue laws that we had here in this country, and how we have changed without having that rest built into our country.
By reflecting Rome, Rome's claim has always been to have power to unite church and state. So if you look at the Vatican flag, for example, the silver and the gold keys bound together with the red cord, symbolic of church-state union. But more and more, we're seeing that while America was originally designated as a civil government, there are movements being made where individuals are making, references to Rome and kind of pointing us that direction, and also simultaneously calling for an abolition of the separation of church and state. So it's not hard to see how it's pointing us back to kind of civil and ecclesiastical unity.
You're the people that I want to hear from. That's why we go to church on Sundays, that you should be the most powerful people on earth. They say separation between church and state, they told me. I said, all right, let's forget about that for one time. We're bringing religion back to our country.
We might structure our civil affairs such that on the one day in 7, which God has deemed holy, we rest from our work and worship Him. This civil and public acknowledgement should certainly be formalized in our governing documents.
What concerns me most about the unity between religious and civil power is there are voices within that camp already that are speaking about Aquinas values. Thomas Aquinas was one who advocated for the death penalty for heresy, and the Great Controversy has warned about that. So has Revelation 13:14 about how there will be individuals persecuted to death. And we are seeing movements within Christian nationalism beginning to push for that already.
We've shown up to teach you to obey. Yeah. And immediately they're like, this is jihad. Immediately, this is Sharia law. Because they feel the force. In some sense, you just have to lean into it. You can't back down on the obedience part. Right. You just we're absolutely here to teach people to obey the standard.
Yeah. Our concern is that long term down the road, our people are going to be facing imprisonment in the future as they did back in 1888.
And if that were to happen, that would be bad. But it would be way better than what you're going through now.
Know that there will come a time of persecution, and that will continue to the point of a death decree.
And so when I see that take place, I realize that the prophetic role that the United States plays is pivotal at the end times. And when I read that lamb-like beast starts to speak as a dragon, the hair on the back of my neck starts to stand up, because I recognize in my mind something that I've read in the Bible before.
Washington, D.C. has so many references to Roman sun worship, and you see again all the Greco-Roman architecture and the pagan deities. And we know in Revelation 13 that the second beast will make an image to the first beast. And we know that first beast is Rome. And so when you go to D.C., which is the capital of our country, our supposed Christian country, and you see again everywhere that you go, Greco-Roman architecture, Roman gods, there's no doubt that image is forming. It's kind of interesting, you have we've talked about this before, the as above, so below, which is reflective of as it is in heaven, so it will be on earth, or as it is on earth. It's like this connection. Now, obviously, we would agree, heaven, it's not heaven on earth right now, at least not from a biblical standpoint. But in this symbology, from the cult standpoint, you actually have the law reflecting up from earth towards heaven, not from heaven down. When you look at the Washington Monument, and then you see the reflection pool as well, and then you see this Lincoln Memorial, which is the Lincoln Temple, I think a lot of people, including myself in the past, have their head buried in the sand.
Yeah, there's a lot of symbolism here, but there's also a lot of symbolism in the temple that's behind us. And it's called the Lincoln Memorial, but it tells you.
It looks a lot like the Parthnon, doesn't it?
Yeah, let's take a look.
Hush now, enter softly, enter slow.
You can't miss the fact that we're in a Roman temple. It says it's a temple. It says quiet, respect, please. It has someone seated on a throne. It has angels on either side with wings outstretched.
Like it was built to be a sacred space.
Of course.
And look at the sticks. They're bound together with kind of the fascia.
Now, I wanted you to catch the second to last word of that statement. Abraham
Enshrined.
Lincoln is enshrined.
Enshrined.
This is a shrine,
Yep.
isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Now, if you let your eyes drift over here on either side, you see the eagle with the head turned to the side? That is the same architecture you find in Rome, and it's the same architecture you find in the Vatican.
They're not hiding.
It's not hiding it. It's out in the open.
I mean, from the columns, all of it.
While you are in the temple, hush beneath the vaulted air.
And this is all facing, again, where is Lincoln looking? He's looking straight east toward the rising sun,
Yeah.
toward the obelisk.
This is a shrine and a temple facing the sun. This is sun worship.
Most people would think that it's, just something that symbolizes Lincoln, and you have the Gettysburg Address, and you have, the famous speeches. But when you walk in, it actually says it's a temple. And there's pictures, you have an angel on one side and an angel on the other side, and one is pointing down and one is pointing up. And it's the same as above, so below terminology that, again, you see with the obelisk and the reflection pool.
And this is the second beast of Revelation 13 that is mimicking
Yes.
the first beast.
Yes. Yep.
So, one of the things that you see is in St. Peter's Basilica, you have a church facing an obelisk in the courtyard, the large Egyptian obelisk that they brought over. Here, we have a Roman temple. They say enshrined forever. It's a shrine, right? It says in this temple.
Right.
And again, it's facing an obelisk. It's facing the east.
Right up in front, it's undeniable that there's this symbolism of where you have this American political power, and it's combined with paganism.
The second beast of Revelation 13 is making an image to the first beast. It is mimicry. It is an exact shadow copy of Rome.
Yes. Yep.
And it is speaking as a dragon.
Yes.
And that's what we're seeing. The laws, the policies of this land that started off in lamb-like qualities, and the laws of this land that started off with freedom of religion, freedom to practice your worship as you see fit, are now being eroded. We are seeing a combination of church-state power. And I was sitting there and I was struck with the realization that a lot of these people, they don't know. They don't know the symbolism that's in our nation's capital. They don't understand how it is a reflection of Rome. They don't see the echoes through history that are leading to where we are and where this country is going, where this is all leading to a focal point that is going to be white hot.
Our next stop, the Library of Congress. Passing through the doors and into the archive, we were handed original manuscripts that have survived empires, wars, and revolutions. For a student of history, it's hard to describe what it feels like to turn pages that have been in existence for hundreds of years. These books are first-hand witnesses from another era. The first book we examined was Isaac Bacchus' 1767 work, The Infinite Importance of the Obedience of Faith and of a Separation from the World, Opened and Demonstrated. It's quite a title, but what Bacchus says about Revelation 13 is well worth hearing. He writes,
"The Protestant beast hath carried blood and slavery round the world in galleys and gallant ships, as far as the first beast ever did."
Bacchus saw a pattern that students of the Bible have recognized throughout history. Whenever the church reaches for political power, it drifts from the example of Christ.
And so we thought it was kind of poetic to be at the Library of Congress, which is, part of the United States. And there's books that are contained in that library that point to the United States as being a fulfillment of Revelation chapter 13.
Next, we turn to another volume, Conjectures on the Prophecies Written in the Forepart of the Year 1799 by John Bacon. Writing about the second beast of Revelation, he asked a question that is just as important today as it was then. He says,
"May this prophetic vision refer more particularly to the clergy in general, who will be on the stage some time after the deadly wound is given. Do not some of them who call themselves Protestants already begin to speak as the dragon, to court his favour, to sympathize with the former beast.
Reading these words from the original edition inside the Library of Congress, it was hard not to hear them as a warning. From there, we moved to the Extravagantes, a medieval collection of canon law. For centuries, Protestant writers have pointed to a passage describing the Pope as Lord God. Critics have often dismissed the quotation outright, claiming it was a myth. We're not interested in arguing about it. Instead, we simply wanted to examine one of the original sources for ourselves. There in front of us, a rare 1501 edition of Pope John XXII's Extravagantes, corresponding to the Vatican manuscript known as VAT.Lat.1397, folio 166v. We found the passage exactly where earlier writers said it was.
Lord God the Pope.
The manuscripts gave us a window into the past.
But to believe that our Lord God, the Pope, the establisher of said decretal, and of this could not decree, as he did decree, should be accounted heretical.
Our next stop would bring us face to face with another chapter of history.
All right, guys, we've kind of been walking through DC and exploring some of the connections with, Rome and the symbolism and imagery that we see here in DC. And now we're here at the World War II Memorial. And we definitely want to be very careful in the way we, talk about this. I have family that have served, family that served in World War II specifically. So when we talk about this, obviously we're not, talking negatively about our veterans in any way whatsoever. But when you walk through again, you can't help but notice the Roman influence here. At the very top, you see the eagles here and the wreaths. This is one of the arches. This is the Atlantic, and on the other side, we have a matching arch that's representing the Pacific. At the bottom, we see the goddess Nike, has a broken sword in her hands and the sun rays. And then Alex, tell us about the very top of that dome.
Well, yeah, you see it's missing the top. And it's a perfect circle, so light can filter through from the sun.
So more sun symbolism.
Yeah, and an eagle was a very solar animal.
It was.
To Rome. And so when you see 4 eagles and they're clutching basically a ribbon that's wrapped around this wreath, it's very Roman in its architecture. And then you were talking about the goddess Nike there on the floor, and you see that she's holding a broken sword in her hands. But James, what is that down there on the ground that is kind of under her foot?
She's got the sun underneath her foot.
Rome itself was a solar-based religion, and so you can see kind of the connection there to sun worship, even in just the image and reflection of Rome itself.
And, you do see so much of it that is a reference to the sun,
right? That
it makes you kind of start wondering, how much of this was intentional?
When I first began investigating and seeing the symbolism in Washington, D.C., is just the scale of the apostasy and the paganism in a supposed capital of a Christian nation. Again, we have the sun rays here clearly, this opening above the dome for the sun to come in. Some of it's undeniable.
Yeah, very much so. Let's look at some of these wreaths as we go around and kind of see what else there is.
Sounds good. Quite impressive architecture, isn't it?
Wow, yeah.
So what do you make of this place?
Well, guys, this is Georgetown University, and it was founded by John Carroll in 1789. It is the premier Catholic institution here in the United States. If you think about what Jesuits stood for, their mission in the Counter-Reformation was to undo everything that the Protestant Reformation stood for. And one of the ways in which they did that was by introducing 2 schools of thought, preterism and futurism. With preterism, they placed Revelation's events in the distant past, or with futurism in the distant future, but all to take the prophetic picture, the feet, off of Roman Catholicism as an institution.
Yeah.
And they've been very effective here in the United States of America in influencing political leaders, in influencing institutions, specifically educational institutions, to push these kinds of values that have led us to where we are today, where Christians are taking over in the United States of America. And Protestantism is believing in post-millennialism or amillennialism in some cases, and believing that they can institute God's kingdom here on this earth.
Yeah, so obviously we just went to Georgetown University and we saw kind of a Jesuit university.
but I think we need to talk a little bit about the Jesuit order itself, just briefly. And so these books right here were actually written by people in the Jesuit order commenting on what Rome has had and done in the past 1700 years. And so this particular newer edition right here contains some of the actual papal bulls and other documents that kicked off some very important problems. For example, the papal bull that kicked off the Inquisition itself by Pope Innocent IV, Ad Extirpanda. Rule 25 comments on the utility or the use of torture for heretics.
And as the Great Controversy recognizes, the Jesuits were Rome's elite in countering what the Protestants stood for.
But what we see right here is a very, very old building, and to me, it harkens back to the medieval ages. What happened during the medieval ages with the Jesuits and the Protestants? You really had the Counter-Reformation that was started then. And so when I see architecture that's stirring back to that, it's not like the architecture did it, but it's interesting. It makes you remember, and it should make us remember our heritage.
Right. And that time, it was a very violent time. This was not a peaceful, we're going to squash this protest peacefully.
There are several points that I think we should point out here. So some of the canons talk about, for example, what Rome did with the scriptures even leading up to the Protestant Reformation, where the scriptures were really prohibited for the laity. And so part of Rome's method was to leave the common person in the dark about the Word of God. Rule 25 comments on the utility or the use of torture for heretics. We can also see some of the later documents here where they comment on how heretics may be burned alive in the sight of men.
So, when I think about this university, I see these tents over here that are set up, and I see they have all these chairs. There's a lot of chairs here set up for graduation. They just had commencement here. And so when we're sitting in a premier Jesuit university, it's not just that a bunch of Jesuits are graduating from it. It's also that you're having people from all around Washington, D.C. that go to this school, and it'll basically write your ticket. If you have a diploma, you graduate from Georgetown University, that's a prestigious name. And so you have these people that are going out into society, culture, religion, politics, and they're being influenced, whether they know it or not, by the ideals and the morals and the philosophy of a Jesuit university. How does that shape a person?
Yeah, well, and how does it shape culture? Because again, it's a broad list of people who graduate, from presidents, businessmen, actors.
Idea of going into a long period of education under the Jesuits was just very natural to get me to where I am today.
Simply put, this country and this world benefit from your commitment to Jesuit principles, to being men.
As a graduate of another great Jesuit institution, Xavier University, I have great affection for the value and purpose of a Jesuit education.
And if you look at the eagle as well, you pointed out earlier that in its talons is a cross and the world.
Yeah, it's a little different because, the United States, it has arrows.
Right.
And it has, I think it's a laurel wreath.
Or an olive branch sometimes.
Or an olive branch.
Yeah.
Versus this, it's the world, like the control over the whole world and control over religion.
We're going to control church and state.
Church and state, exactly.
To examine this further, we went back to the Library of Congress. This time we had an appointment with the curator of rare books. Our goal was to examine 2 handwritten decretal manuscripts from the 13th century. Although the text was originally compiled by the canon lawyer Gratian in the 12th century, the handwritten copies we were examining have survived nearly 8 centuries and were now resting beneath our fingertips. These volumes help preserve what would later become part of the Corpus Juris Canonici, the great collection of medieval canon law that was formally recognized under Pope Gregory XIII. Looking through Distinctio 40, several passages immediately stood out.
There it is. That's the Si Papa for Fratorem Salutis Negligens, and Solatin Negligens Deprehendentur, Eremisi Sui. So there's Distinctio 40, Si Papa right there.
If a pope fails in his duty,
and leads people straight to hell. No one on earth has the authority to judge him, because he judges all.
Another presents it as a pious act that Constantine called the Pope God. And there, written directly on the parchment, appears the title, Vicarious File Die, Vicar of the Son of God.
It is quite clearly shown that the pontiff cannot be bound by secular power, which is evidently called God by the pious Prince Constantine, since it is evident that even a god cannot be judged by men.
When you study the Great Controversy, it's hard to see documents like these as just mere historical artifacts. They speak directly to the questions of authority, worship, and conscience. Many of the same questions that concerned Christians centuries ago are once again becoming part of public discussion.
Have you heard of the Heritage Foundation? Well, we're not the Heritage Foundation, we're Heritage at Hope. But the Heritage Foundation released a family report for 2026 calling for a uniform day of rest. And you know, the problem with that is back in the 19th century, when blue laws were more popular, there were people who got arrested and put in chain gangs for violations of those blue laws.
But then God did something.
The stage was set, but as a church-state union, the revival this country needs.
If you're a follower of Jesus, you've been waiting your whole life for this moment. A day of rededication and a jubilee of prayer for a nation.
This event was important enough for us to show up in person specifically because we saw it as a fulfillment of Bible prophecy.
We know that we live in serious times because the Declaration of Independence itself is controversial. This very meeting is criticized as an attempt to turn America into a Christian nation.
Our Declaration of Independence is a declaration of dependence upon God.
We see this combination of church-state power coming together, and it's something that we talk about on our podcast, on our YouTube channel quite frequently.
The separation of church and state was to keep the state or the government from controlling church. It was never intended for the church to not be a part of government, but it was to keep the government from controlling church.
The church, as it used to be, used to take care of the state. But in time, they slowly turned the tables, and we, growing up in this generation, I'd say probably the last 150 years, we believe the church has no involvement with the state when it was the other way around.
And so it was very interesting to come to an event where there was going to be a national dedication of the United States to God, and to witness what kind of revival might come as the fruits of that commitment.
We are doing that today, again, to rededicate this nation to the Lord of hosts.
Hear our prayers for rededication today.
National rededication.
May we rededicate ourselves.
A rededication.
Lord, on this great national anniversary, we gather to rededicate our country to you.
As we in the beginning dedicated this land to your most holy name, today, here, Lord, in this 250th year of American independence, we hereby rededicate the United States of America as one nation under God.
Let's pray without ceasing. Let us pray for our nation on bended knee.
There are many Christians who want genuine revival in the United States, but don't realize the mechanism that they're being a part of is going to lead to ultimately the mark of the beast crisis, and many people are going to be caught unprepared. We're at the threshold of church and state coming together, and we're seeing blue laws being pushed for. If ever there was a time to warn people, because time is short, that would be now.
Yeah, we'll make that law.
Sabbath blue laws.
Blue laws.
A blue law. Blue laws. Blue laws. Blue laws.
Sabbath laws on Sunday.
Maybe the Sabbath laws.
Blue laws.
Blue laws.
Blue laws. Sunday closing laws.
Blue laws.
Blue laws meant everything was closed.
The blue laws.
Blue laws. Blue laws.
The blue laws. Maybe Sunday Sabbath laws. Or blue laws.
Blue laws.
Or Sabbath laws.
Sabbath laws.
Sabbath laws.
I remember the blue laws. Stories about the blue laws when
These laws are known as blue laws.
blue laws.
Blue laws.
It used to be this thing like we would impose that on the entire culture.
To remember the blue laws.
They have the blue law.
They were called blue laws.
Sunday blue laws. Everything has to stay closed on a Sunday.
Germany still has blue laws.
So blue laws were Sunday, everything shut down.
Blue laws in America.
The idea of blue laws still makes a lot of sense.
We had blue laws.
Remember the blue laws? Any of you remember reading about that at least? Almost every state had what was called the blue laws.
is everything's closed on Sundays. They still have blue laws on Sundays, so everything's closed.
The only way to start the return to moral order in this country is by force. It's the only way.
We really need to be really ruthless when it comes to the exercise of power.
I pray today, Lord, that you have not finished with America.
When I read Exodus 31 verse 13, the Sabbath issue signifies that it is God who sanctifies us. So the Sabbath to me is a twofold rebuke against the twin errors of Catholicism, where they teach salvation in sin or salvation by the merit of man. As a Protestant, I believe that justification by faith takes place through faith and not by works of the law. And so for me, keeping the Sabbath is a signifying fact that it is God who sanctifies me, God who transforms my heart, and God working within me. In Philippians 2 verse 13, it is God who works within you and to will and to do and to keep his commandments. But it is the work of God from beginning to end. I have no merit for any of that.
You guys are in favor of blue laws and like that sort of thing?
Yes,
okay. What would be, so if someone, let's say, went to church they were Christian, but they went to church on Saturday.
That's us.
That's us. Oh, is that you guys?
Yeah, that's us. Yeah.
Okay, all right. What denomination are you guys?
Messianic Christian.
So you guys are in favor of a uniform day of rest but it would be Sunday legislation. This is what the Heritage Foundation is pushing, is what I'm saying. It's not a trap question or anything.
Oh, I see.
I believe the Sabbath versus Sunday debate is important because it is the great mark of the beast Christ is spoken of in Revelation 13 and 14.
Because we know that there's a mark and there's a sign. And the sign is God and his commandments, and it's a sign between his people, both on their minds, through their thoughts, and then their actions as well. And similarly, we know that there'll be a sign or a mark for the beast. And unfortunately, a lot of the world right now is wandering after the beast. And I think there's a lot of people who are doing it, certainly, maybe even most people, unknowingly.
It makes me sad when I see all the stores open on Sunday. I partake in it as much as anybody else, but it'd be nice if we could go back to a day of rest where collectively we honored the Lord's order.
Back when I was very young, we didn't shop, we didn't do anything on Sunday, except for go to grandmother's house and have a meal with the family.
But again, if people's hearts are not changed, you can close down every day of the week, and still, your sin is gonna rule and reign the day.
Yes.
And then today, people can just do anything. It's like any other day. But I think it would be great to have a national day of rest, Sabbath, a national Sabbath, to give everybody the freedom to celebrate it the way they want to, but not legislate it from government.
I honestly think it should be Saturday. That's the original Sabbath, but I'll take Sunday if that's what we can get.
We had a Christian nationalist named Stephen Wolf. We interviewed him on our channel, and he said the way that he would enforce getting people to go to church on Sunday is by restricting the ability to buy and sell.
So it wouldn't be compelled worship. It wouldn't be compelling people to have faith. It would simply create outward conditions such that people can put away ordinary earthly concerns so that they can focus on the purpose of that day, or at least the purpose of that worship, which would be more heavenward. It would seem to me that nowadays it would be easier to do some sort of monetary consequence or financial consequence to ensure that at least people's businesses are closed to the public. The law, to my mind, would be to just deny public access. So that would deny people a source of revenue for that day, obviously, because they can't sell their stuff. But it would have to be enforced. So if there is a law, there'd have to be some sort of sanction involved with the behavior.
Now, if you guys have read Revelation 13, about the mark of the beast, that is a direct parallel to Revelation 13. And so Does it concern you to like hear that there are people who want to do that? Up to, and they have, even several of them, Stephen Wolf, Joel Webbin, have openly talked about how they would, punishment eventually could get to capital punishment. So
I would look at all these specific moral laws in the Old Testament, and some of them being civic laws, civil codes. And I would say that the ones that specify the death penalty, that according to the Noahic covenant in Genesis chapter 9, there's actually only one crime, not only a sin, but it's also a crime, that merits or mandates even capital punishment, and that is the taking of someone's life. In the case of adultery, or the case of breaking blue laws, which we had on the books here in America for quite a long time, Sabbath laws, or blasphemy laws, or these kinds of things, wherever the death penalty is mentioned, I would see that as that would be a maximum penalty. What I would say is for repeat incessant offender, they've done it again and again and again and again. They've received certain fines, certain penalties. They've been told to cease and desist. It's been years. They continue. Then yes, it could raise all the way up as a maximum penalty to that point.
The same would be for blasphemy and adultery, for example. Repeat offenders could theoretically face the death penalty.
Theoretically, a repeat offender could.
they wouldn't start there, but eventually for repeat offenders and people who are stirring up unrest and speaking out could have publicly be put to death.
That's concerning. Yeah. Absolutely. Like you say, it should be a freedom of choice. Like if you're getting punished because you're not following a religion, then we're no worse than, other bad organizations in the past. I don't want to throw the name out, but like the Nazis, right? They punished people for not being like them. Yeah. Right. And so you can claim it's under Christianity, but we become no different than them, right?
And on page 61 right here, Forma Irementi, you can see there's an oath that's being sworn, and actually this oath is mentioned in the Great Controversy, that heretics, schismatics, and rebels of the Pope and his successors I will persecute and beat down. And I think we find evidence that that is exactly what took place.
The first time that I read the Great Controversy personally was probably, maybe like a couple of decades ago. I read it first as a teenager, and as we saw, for example, in 2015, the European Sunday Alliance taking place, and we had Laudato Si and some of the encyclicals talking about Sunday rest. As the time went by, it became more and more obvious that what I had read as a kid was even more true. Of course, I knew it was then, but then to see it fulfill, it became even more and more powerful and a living reality.
And it's such a fantastic read to go through and see the history, and then to kind of shift gears and to talk about what is coming.
It provides prophetic insight. I think we have to remember this book was written over 100 years ago. And I'll tell you, in my first interaction with some of the Christian nationalists that we've interviewed, to me, it was a big wake-up call that this moment is here, that we truly are in the toenails of time.
We are closer to the end than we ever have been before, and the final decision, the final test, the line in the sand distinction between right and wrong, good and evil, is coming faster than most people realize.
But if you go down in the 17th century, there were Protestants who began to recognize this connection between the Sabbath and Sunday with God's law and the mark of the beast, specifically connecting to Rome's mark of authority, what they claim divine authority to change.
The other thing that we find is, commenting as we had before about the change of Saturday to Sunday, Rome actually made an argument at the Council of Trent that change was not based upon the teaching of Christ, non Christi predicatione cesarunt, but it was upon the authority, sed auctoritate ecclesiae mutata sunt, or upon the authority of the church was the change done. And this was in response to Protestants who were really claiming sola scriptura, that Rome needed a valid response to undercut them. And part of her method of doing that was to point out that their inconsistency, in many cases still keeping Sunday, not all Protestants were reformed. Rome's argument here was to point out, hey, if you're keeping Sunday, logically you're accepting Roman Catholic Church authority because we're the ones that had the authority to change that day. And that was part of the argument that was taking place at this time from the Archbishop of Reggio, Gasparis Afoso. And you can see his oration here in 1562, January 18, 1562.
The Catholic Church states that they have changed the Sabbath to Sunday, but there's no scriptural precedent for that. There's no scriptural backing behind it.
Question: what is the third commandment? Answer: the third commandment is, remember that thou keep holy the Sabbath day. Question: which is the Sabbath day? Answer: Saturday is the Sabbath day. Question: why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Answer: we observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. Question: why did the Catholic Church substitute Sunday for Saturday? Answer: the Church substituted Sunday for Saturday because Christ rose from the dead on a Sunday and the Holy Ghost descended upon the apostles on a Sunday. Question: by what authority did the Church substitute Sunday for Saturday? Answer: the Church substituted Sunday for Saturday by the plenitude of that divine power which Jesus Christ bestowed upon her.
God's 10 commandments that were written in stone with his own finger, signifying their permanence and unchanging nature, they cannot be changed by man. They cannot be changed by any earthly prelate.
I believe it's the test. Similar to the test in the garden, which seemed just like a fruit, but it was something that God asked, and it was, will you obey or not? I think people are going to face a similar test in the end. And the question is, will you obey God or not? And people who fail that test, unfortunately, are in danger of being lost.
So the real question is, what are we going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Are we ready for Christ's soon coming? And what are you doing to help spread the gospel message to those who desperately need to hear it?